Okay, it's clear that there's just too much violence in the world, too much negativity. It's time for me to start a new life under the sea.
Under the sea, there'll be no accusations, just friendly crustaceans under the sea.
Hey all, welcome to another Broken Meeple review, and today I'm excited to talk about this one. Really excited. This is blank. Yeah, literally blank. This is the expansion Leviathan for the great game Abyss. This is one that I have talked about so often, saying that it's an underrated gem, and I still believe that. For some reason, they have this habit of not putting the title on the front cover though. They have to, you have to go to the side in order to find it. Oh well, doesn't matter, because I should be chucking this box away because I don't need it anymore, but artwork looks so good. We'll get onto that later. But this expansion for Abyss is the second in the lineup. Previous was the Kraken and the base game. In this one, it doesn't add a great deal to the game. It adds a few extra lords and a few extra cards, just to keep things fresh. But the main thing it does is that it replaces a key element of the base game with a new one. The weakest link of the... I'm going to put this one in here. Weakest link of Abyss, in my opinion, and shared by a lot of people, was the fret track. This fret track essentially was a marker that you moved down this little board, and it gave you a reward if, when you explore the depths, you find a giant Leviathan card. And basically, if you skipped it, the reward got bigger and bigger for the next person. If you fought it, you got whatever reward it was on. It rarely ever got further than 2 spaces down that track before somebody would just claim the reward because it was too much of a risk to hope that you were going to see it next. It was a bit of a flawed system. It didn't bother me too much. I still loved the game even with it because it was a small element, but there was just one of those niggles that's like, yeah, this is kind of annoying and I can't really take it out. But now you can. This replaces it. You now have the same cards, those Leviathan cards, except now you have a separate board with, different spots for the different Leviathans and a card deck full of these gigantic monstrosities. And, I mean, these look menacing as crazy, especially when you can see the little fish or diver to scale. These are huge. If I came across one of these when I was exploring the depths, I would just basically, well, family friendly, but you know what I'd do. So it would just, I would not want to be near one of these things. And the artwork on these, oh my god. Abyss is possibly the most gorgeous looking game I have ever played. I can't think of many more that I like the look of. Well, this underwater world, it looks so good, so colourful. The artist for this game deserves an award and needs to do more games. But here you have these cards with the Leviathan pictures on them, lots of different types of Leviathans. They look cool, they look vibrant. The artwork is just spectacular. But the way this track works is you start off with 1 in a random spot, numbered between 2 and 12, I believe. You have 2 dice. And the idea is that when you draw a Leviathan card, you instead have 2 choices. You either fight the Leviathan, or a Leviathan that's there, they're all on the borders essentially. And in doing so, you will roll a die, add a value of an ally that you play from your hand, and if you beat the resistance, it gains a wound. You gain the tokens as a reward, those little point tokens. They've now thrown in some extra ones like free pearls and free cards, that kind of thing, really nice rewards, even a key if you're lucky. And, and obviously you get some, potential points there. But if you take the last wound off a Leviathan, you kill it outright, and you gun for this little cool miniature, which makes you the Scourge of the Depths, which gives you an extra 5 points at the end. So if you imagine that the Kraken miniature from the previous expansion gave you -5, this one gives you +5. So it's a nice little, opposite end to the scale. But if you choose to skip the Leviathan, there's a risk. You have to spawn another Leviathan on this board, and you roll the 2 dice. You may roll the 2 dice to attack the Leviathan. There's some more allies that give you some combat bonuses, but they're a small addition. More on that later, actually. And the idea is that when you roll these 2 dice to spawn the Leviathan, if one is already in the spot you're going to put it in, you suffer the negative effect of that Leviathan. It could be taking wounds, which are negative points. It could be losing pearls. It could be losing cards. It could be losing an entire lord from your tableau. It can be pretty nasty. So you better be careful if you want to be a coward and not protect us from the giant Leviathans that are going to eat us all alive. And that's essentially the main thing the game adds. You no longer have that threat track from the original, this takes place of it. And to add to the whole combat thing, you have new allies for each race, the standard races, not the Kraken ones. And these ones have the same value 1 to 5, but they also have an icon at the top that stipulates whether you can spend pearls to up your combat value, or whether you can roll 2 dice instead of 1. These are great because they add a new sort of value to some of the allies you get from exploring the depths. Because you're thinking, do I want to give him a pearl or 2 pearls for that? Suddenly that 2 or 3 ally that you thought the value's a bit low is a little bit more tempting when now you realise it could also be used for a combat role. And the Leviathans that come by can all be fought with crabs or one of the other 4 races. So again, the colour is important as well. Now, this is single-handedly an auto buy. It really is. For this alone, because that threat track in the original base game is fairly small, fairly, lame, not that good. But it was a small element that I didn't mind. Here, though, you now have this bigger element of the game because it gives you an alternate path to victory. I mean, those tokens that you can just take the ones that give you points, or you can get the ones that give you bonus, or a mixture of the two. And that 5-point miniature is nothing to scoff at as well. So you could actually play most of the game ignoring the fact that you've got to get a lot of those lords and just try and hunt down all the Leviathans. Keep exploring the depths. You'll get money from everybody else in pearls, but every time you get a chance to fight a Leviathan, you'll be able to take it out and get those 5 points, get those tokens. I mean, if you get a decent enough ally and a decent enough roll, you can potentially get a lot of tokens. Anywhere between 1 and 5 tokens could be up for grabs, depending on how many wounds you inflict on a particular Leviathan. Now, of course, you can say that, die rolling, now you've got luck in the game. Easily mitigated. You roll a die plus the value of the ally you play. I mean, if you don't put a decent ally in, then you're trusting the chance that's your own fault. But you can easily get it to a setup where you either auto pass or when you don't have to roll this high. And occasionally, yes, the die is going to mess you over, but that's the risk you take. And the game isn't so long that a little bit of luck here and there is that bad. Bear in mind, exploring the depths and taking a new lord has a little bit of luck of the draw anyway. So it doesn't make the game super random like that loot deck from the Kraken expansion. That's the one thing I refuse to play with. I hate that loot deck. It was horrible. It was a stupid push of luck system. That's the one thing I don't play. But now, with this, I now use all of Kraken except for that loot deck. I use everything that's in here and all of the base game, and I'm sorted. And that's pretty much all this expansion adds. It's a fairly small expansion. You get about 10 more lords, you get a ton of these Leviathan cards, you get the new track, those new allies, the wound tokens, to go with it. Pretty much everything in this game is designed to work with that threat track. You don't really get much else in here apart from, yes, the dreaded, you can now play with 5 players. Who cares? Seriously, I'm getting fed up with these 5-player additions to games. I know that when you get 5 people, it's difficult to find a game to play, but there's plenty enough on the shelves to play 5-player games with. Abyss teeters on that line for being too long if you play with 4 players, particularly if they're new players. If they all know how to play the game, then maybe you could convince me to play with 5, but to be honest, 4 is a decent length. 3 is fantastic, 2 is fantastic. I wish this had a solo mode. In fact, I wish this expansion brought in a solo mode rather than a 5-player edition. But if you want the 5th player, it's yours. So that's all I can really say. It's a small expansion to a fantastic game. Is it a must-buy? Yes. That threat track in the base game is with this, it is now a pointless addition. This replaces that with a system. You don't even have to get the Kraken expansion before this one. You could even skip Kraken and get just this one if your money's a bit tight. Personally, I say you should get both because those black pearls and the corruption mechanic in that is really cool. But, With this, you just want that threat track replaced because this Leviathan thing is so much better. The new lords are great, the new allies are great, and if you want the 5th player, well then you can have a 5th player. That's entirely down to you. This is a must buy for me, and it's a... See? Empty. Already everything's in my Abyss game. I love it a bit. It's just another solid expansion for a great game. So, that's it for me. Personally, the Abyss, it's hard to really give expansions ratings. I mean, the 5th player I'm not too fussed about, and everything else I like, so I probably would say it's pretty cheap. It's not an expensive expansion, so I'd give this one as high as a 9, personally. It's one that I would consider as a must-buy. Most of it is decent. 5th player, take it or leave. I can go with that. So, Abyss Leviathan. Can we have another expansion, please? Yeah, wishful thinking. I've only just bought this one out, but... love this game. Love this game. Abyss is one of those ones that is climbing up my top 100. It's been in the top... I think it's been in the top 25 or 30 since I first put it in there. This could... With this, and the games I've been getting of it recently, where I've shown new players it could creep into my top 10 this year. It has potential. I'm really, really loving Abyss right now. So, we'll see how that goes. But I still recommend it. It's a great game that you should get. And if you have the game and enjoy it enough, get this expansion. That's it for me. See you on the next Broken Meeple review, Abyss Leviathan. See you next time. And regardless of whether you're eaten by a giant shark, it's just only a game. So maybe it'll spit you out later. Take care. See you soon.